All right, Jared, welcome to the program. How you doing?
Good. How are you? Been looking
I'm
forward
doing
to
all
this.
right. What's that?
Good, good. What was that?
I'm doing all right. I'm hanging in there.
That's
Um,
good. So
I'm
you're feeling
getting,
better from being sick and everything? Like, is
yeah,
that is progressively getting better?
yes, yes. I'm, I mean, I sleep with the oxygen, but I don't run around with it anymore that much. I met, for those of you that have used, uh, the oxy, what's it called? Oximeter. The,
I don't
I
know.
forgot the name of it. The thing you put on your finger to measure the percentage of your oxygen. I'm hitting about 96% without the oxygen, so I'm doing all right.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
I have sleep apnea, so I wear the full like face mask and stuff, but
Yep.
it wasn't too bad getting used to that, and now I get good sleep. So,
Right. I know. I do have the sleep apnea mask, but I don't use it like I should.
oh,
But anyway, it's welcome aboard, man.
thank you.
So I'm excited for one reason. For many reasons, I'm excited to have you on the program. But for one of the reasons, you've been with me from day one, haven't you?
Yep. Yeah,
I know
your
that.
very first
Does that
video.
sound kind of
And
conceited that I'm excited that you have watched me from day one?
no, I think it's really cool talking to you. I've been listening to your stuff, not everything, but like every now and then I'll check in. I kind of go back and forth between you and Palmer and other people, and
Yeah.
so it's pretty cool to have a conversation with you.
Yeah. And Palmer's sick right now. So let's remember him in our prayers. He's got the coronavirus.
Yeah,
And I hope it, I hope he does well. I hope he gets out of
yeah,
that soon.
I hope so too. We,
Um,
I don't know. I think you, if I remember right, did you get the shot?
no,
Uh
so we were scheduled to go get it.
huh.
And then we got sick. We were going to get it like 3 days from the day we got sick. And so, and that's a whole other ball of wax, can of worms, whatever you want to call it. But I don't know exactly what I'm going to do now. I know that I've built up an immune system, and my
Yeah,
wife has too. So it's like, what would be the point of going and getting it? They're telling me that I should go get it 90 days from the day I got sick, and so I'm still thinking about that, praying about that. I know what our prophet has said, and I think there's some wiggle room there. I think
yeah,
there's some self, some introspection with the spirit, and not every situation is the same.
yeah. I've talked to a lot of people who say that for one reason or another they can't because of like a pre-existing medical condition
Right.
like they want to, but so for anyone that hasn't met me before, I
Yeah.
basically
I
have
was
been
going to
against it.
introduce you, by the way. I was going to talk about you, but
Oh
we
yeah,
got off on another thing. Go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah. So I'm Christian Homestead. I used to be Latter Day Homestead, but I'm doing this series of videos where we recently had the devotional here in Kansas and Oklahoma, and in Sister Wendy Nelson's talk, she gave us a challenge to go back and listen to all 31 of President Nelson's talks ever since he became president of the church. And then after doing that, go back and do it again. So I decided to incorporate that into my channel. And I got to the talk where he's talking about the correct name of the church. And I
Hmm.
had the feeling that, because like what he was saying in that talk is that the problem with the terms LDS, Mormon, Latter day Saints, whatever, is that it takes the most important part of the name out of the name, which is Jesus Christ. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna go ahead and do it. I'm gonna change the name over to Christian Homestead and just stick with that. It's gonna be short, simple. For people that are not members of the church, if they happen to come across my channel, then they'll know just right off the bat that I'm coming from a Christian, Christ-centered perspective. But
Right.
so that
I
so
think that's a good name. I think
you
it's
like it?
very fitting. Yeah, I like the name.
Good, thank you, thank you. So what were we just talking about? Was there a question I was?
Well, we were talking about the shot, and I'm
Oh yeah,
sorry. I was going to introduce. I apologize, but we got
no, that's
off on
fine.
a few other little tangents.
Yeah,
Um, we'll come back to that shot thing in a second of the jab. That's what we were talking about.
Yeah.
Uh, I love that. Uh, why Homestead? Because you are a homesteader, right?
Yeah.
What do you
Yeah.
do around your home?
So now just right off the bat, I'm originally from Salt Lake area, lived there into my late 20s. Then we moved to Arizona because I became an aircraft dispatcher. We moved in with my wife's parents. We were trying to save up money, couldn't find a job uh, in what I wanted to do with aircraft dispatching. So I joined the Army. We were in Texas, which was kind of my first exposure really to like being out in the country because we were just like right in the center of Texas. Got out of the Army. I just did one enlistment, went back to Arizona. And then my wife, it's always been kind of a dream for her to do homesteading, to have land and stuff like that. We'd go to like yard sales and we'd see somebody with a big property and we just thought, wow, that would be nice. And as I listened to like YouTubers and like um, just all these different kind of channels about modern day Gadiat and robbers and their schemes, I kind of like started to get on board with homesteading. So we moved here to Kansas because it's super super cheap compared to like Arizona, Utah, those places.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we have right now is we have 3 cows. We have 2 dairy cows that we're
Wow.
going to breed together. We got a bull and a heifer, and they're jerseys. That's the breed. And then we have a meat cow that's just a calf. I'm probably going to get a few more meat cows. So we have cows. And then up until last week, we had turkeys, guineas, ducks. Um, there was no, yeah. So we got and a goose. So we got rid of those, and now we're just doing cows and chickens, and that's it. So we're getting eggs, we're getting meat, and then hopefully sometime late next year we'll get milk, and we'll also be getting some meat from this calf once it grows up.
You don't mind if I ask you a few questions about farming, do you?
No,
Before we get on to some other subjects, I think it's fascinating because, well, you're obviously not off the grid,
no,
so you're not doing that. You mentioned beef calves. How
yeah.
often do you is that so? How long does that take to raise them? You have to raise them to a certain point, and then you have them butchered, right? Or you butcher it yourself, take it to a butcher to cut it up, right? How often do you have to do that? Once a year?
Well, I don't know because we're still new to this. We've only been doing this for just a little over a year and a half.
Uh huh.
But generally speaking, yeah, you can raise them yourself. Um, Raise them the way that you want to, raise them with a happy life and the type of diet that you want them to eat. And I'm thinking, I think plan right now is to kind of like butcher one a year. I don't know how much exactly that's going to give us because we haven't done it before.
Right.
But you want to butcher them when they're, honey, was it under 24 months?
About 18 months is
Oh.
the ideal, under 24 months.
So like under 24 months old is when you would want to butcher them. So you can butcher them at any time, but you probably want to raise them until they're larger.
I see.
And so I'm thinking right now we would probably do like one a year. We got to get a freezer and stuff like that, but
Right.
yeah.
And then that
But I'm
that
excited.
yeah, no, definitely. And you're eliminating a lot of the growth hormones and the I don't know. I don't know much about the store bought meat that I buy. I know I eat it, I consume it, but it's not you're the way you're doing it is homesteading is a lot more healthier. You're
Yeah, I would say
eliminating a
so
lot of
because
the
it,
additives and whatever steroids, what have
yeah,
you, right?
all that stuff. And then on top of that, it's fresh. It's like fresh right from your farm. So it's not like sitting out for a while. Like we're getting eggs right now, and the eggs are amazing. They're
Oh,
really good.
I love farm fresh eggs. The yolks are
Yeah,
really orange, aren't they? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt
yeah.
you. Go ahead.
No, no, no. Yeah, they're a lot more on the yellow side. There's definitely a difference in taste. We were getting duck eggs until we got rid of the ducks, and those are okay. Like I'm not a big fan of duck eggs, but some people like them. Uh, and then the chickens, man, when you process your own chicken, or in other words, butcher it,
Uh-huh.
um, the meat is just like so much more like saturated in flavor. And so, and again, you know that they've lived a very humane life. We let our chickens free range, so they're not just like in a chicken run or anything. They go all around the property pretty much. and it just tastes really, really good. Like, I'm usually not a big fan of dark meat, but with the chickens that we butchered here, no problem, because it tastes so good.
Yeah. Well, wasn't food like I actually worked on a chicken ranch at one time in my life for a very short period, and I would go. They would have like 10 barns full of like thousands of chickens, and they would raise them in 6 weeks.
Yeah,
6 weeks time from the time that they were little chicks, and that's scary when they're blowing up that fast. But
yeah,
wasn't food a long time ago, maybe during the time of the pioneers and the 1800s and Joseph Smith, wasn't weren't chickens smaller? Fowl was small, like smaller and richer. The meat was richer. It, we weren't consuming these Neanderthalic Arnold Schwarzenegger type foods. You know what I mean? We were
yeah.
eating uh,
I,
small but good stuff. You know?
yeah. Because they usually, as far as I'm aware, as I get to like learn this, they have this certain breed called Cornish cross, and they've been bred to be meat chickens, and they're big, and I don't think that they breed very easily on their own. They require assistance, so it's kind of like a more unnatural chicken. We have a friend here in town that she's like a rancher. She does poultry, she does beef, she does hogs and stuff like that.
Uh huh.
But yeah, I would like to see how it was done back in those days, because like with what we feed our chickens, some of what they get is grass, some of what they get is bugs just here on the property. But we also have to give them this like type of grain. There's different type of grain that you can get for chickens, and then you have to feed them scratch, which is like it's like has corn in it and seeds and like these different things. You throw it on the
Right.
ground so that they get some like rocks and dirt into their
Yeah.
digestive system because it helps them. So I don't know like what they did back then. I'm sure they had some kind of grain or something like that for chickens, but
Mhm.
it I doubt that they did the Cornish crosses back then. That's probably a more recent um, development. So I don't know, but I'm sure it was healthier.
Well,
I'm
the
sure
more
it probably
you
was.
learn about these things, I'd like to know more from you because it's fascinating.
Yeah,
It's really fascinating.
yeah. I'll tell you this. If any of you out there are even like thinking about doing this kind of lifestyle, I would encourage you, because it really enriches your life in so many different ways. Like, because it's been my kind of opinion that our Heavenly Father, he's essentially a homesteader. He has land, he has animals, he has a family, and what he's doing with us, he's harvesting us, he's trying to get us to reach our full potential. And so by getting into this kind of lifestyle, I feel like you kind of like step into that a little bit and get a sense of what our Heavenly Father is like, because
right.
I love all of our animals and I want them all to be happy and I want them to reach their fullness of joy in this mortal life. And it's really
Beautiful.
good for the family because they, my kids like learn more responsibility. Like they already had responsibility before, but like taking care of animals and stuff like that. We have a garden. So it's just like, there's so many parables in the scriptures that have to do with harvesting and farming and planting and
Well,
different types of livestock.
yeah, you're
So
kind of a demigod in some ways. I mean,
yeah,
you're a creator.
yeah, it's kind of what it feels like. Uh it feels right, and I think that anybody would get satisfaction out of doing it. And there's different types of homesteading. You could like have sheep, you could have just focus on chickens or geese or whatever. So there's a lot
Right.
of different variations. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I It's an interesting subject.
Yeah.
So, moving on a little bit, what else? Now, I've watched your channel, so I know a little bit about it. But for my audience that doesn't know you, uh, what are some things that you talk about besides? Well, I don't know if you don't talk that much about homesteading, a little
Yeah,
bit,
just very
but
little. I just kind of like accent my channel with the homesteading,
yeah,
it's kind of my gimmick. Mostly what I do, the main focus is like looking for the signs of the times for the second coming. That's like the main
okay,
focus. So I do that. I try and stay on top of church news, both through like Deseret News, the church newsroom, or just like random things that pull up on the internet and just see like what's going on in the church. So I do a lot of church news. I do some like looking at natural disasters and stuff. And then I'm just trying to like really research all these different topics from Adam-on-Diamond to the siege on Jerusalem during the final battle before Christ comes. Like try to get that all like ironed out, because I know there's a lot
Yeah.
of people that have already done that, but I think there's a lot of different interpretations of things. And so
There
I
is
just want to like get it. Go ahead.
no go. Sorry, I was
No,
gonna
it's okay.
say there's nothing wrong with someone else coming up and talking about it, because what I've learned, Jared, I don't. I think I've done this program for almost 3 years, maybe 2.5, 2 years and 8 months. I don't know, somewhere around there. Uh, I kind of went through that phase, and you've watched me where I went and I did all of those, talked about Gadianton robbers, secret combinations, the end time, the second coming, and then you'll do something on Armageddon, you'll do something on the millennium, and then you do all those videos, and then I started getting into fair LDS, fair Mormon,
Yeah.
and well, they used to be called fair Mormon, now they're fair Latter-day Saint, which is good. They're following the prophet by wanting to keep,
Oh,
and
I didn't know
what.
that they did that. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
they actually, I think they're just calling themselves fair, but if you go to their website, it's fair LDS or fair Latter-day Saint. And learning a lot, and just going BYU, religious studies, listening, reading other scholars that are well versed and educated and they have the credentials. You learn that people like B.H. Roberts, Bruce R. McConkie, we could go on and on, James E. Talmage, they had their own opinions about a lot of those things. That
Yeah.
a lot of folks that get new in doing these channels, they think, oh, everything is set in stone.
Yeah.
But it's really not. You know what I'm saying? There
Yeah.
are a lot of opinions. Go ahead. Sorry.
This is the sense that I get. Okay. From a psychological standpoint, we human beings do not like the unknown. We want to feel safe. We want to feel secure in our worldview. So I think some people probably try and get it all completely figured out to have that sense of like, okay, I know exactly what to expect. There's no unknowns. It's all here in the scriptures. And kind of like you said, I'm more of the opinion that a lot of these prophecies and stuff, they are real. We can count on things, but it's mostly just to give us a sense that kind of roughly how things are going to go, and that we're going to be okay. That in the end,
And that it's
God
going to
wins.
happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As far as like putting it into a timeline, you may have some success on some things, but like, for example, what was going to happen is first I was approached by another channel. You maybe have come across him before. It's called, his channel is called L Alvarez D, if I remember right. He doesn't like talk like you and me. Like he mainly does kind of like slideshows or like scrolling text with
Okay.
music and stuff like that. He has a pretty big channel, but he came across my channel. He wanted to like do like a collaboration, and I was like, well, what if like you and me and Palmer and Troy, we all talk together? But then he wasn't able to do it.
Uh-huh.
The funny thing about it though, he's from Spain. He's a Spaniard, and that's where I went on my mission. We served in the same
Oh,
mission,
wow.
not at the same time. So I was like, that's funny. We have two Barcelona missionaries, and we got Troy Abels and Palmer, who both were. He was, he was the mission president, and you were a missionary in the same mission. So I thought that was kind of funny. But
Yeah.
he wanted to put together like this timeline together, and I was just like, dude, I don't know, because I haven't really done that kind of thing, and I don't even know if it's really that possible to do it. So anyway, that's just kind of my feelings about it.
Yeah. Well, eschatology within itself is uh when you're raised in the church, you kind of think, and I'm going to be called a heretic by some, maybe by saying this. I've said it many times, so I don't know why they're not used to it. Uh when you're raised in the church, you kind of think that a lot of these things are that they're signed, sealed, and delivered, and they're
Yeah.
answered. and that
Yeah.
because so and so said, but 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 a lot of people aren't reading and studying what some of these people that have degrees in church history, Near Eastern studies, religious latter LDS religious studies. There are so if you go back, how many apostles have we had since Joseph Smith?
A lot.
I don't know. A lot,
I don't know.
right?
Yeah.
How many of them have written their own commentaries on the scriptures? We know we barely scratched the surface as lay. I I would call us lay Latter-day Saints because we're not in the upper echelons of education.
Yeah.
But I have learned just by scratching the surface that, uh, like for instance, here's an example would be did you see my two different views on the 10 tribes, the lost 10 tribes?
I don't think I have.
There are different views. Some believe it
Yeah.
literally, like there's a
Mhm.
lost group of people in a north part of the planet buried
Mhm.
in snow, not buried in snow, but that that there's ice and they live in a paradisiacal uh
Like a cavern, a hollow earth type
right,
thing. Yeah.
right. And that was what people believed before modern technology. And Joseph Smith never spoke about the internet. Look how huge the internet is when it comes to gathering Israel.
Hmm.
Look how
Yeah.
it works as a tool. But Joseph Smith never once, I'm not saying he didn't know about it. I have no clue. But he never once mentioned it, did he?
No.
No.
No. And that's okay. So look, that's how I grew up because I grew up in Utah. And I kind of like took it as fact because I would listen to like my uncles and they would be like, yeah, the 10 lost tribes, the main group, they're like in the North Pole. And Admiral Byrd, when he was a pilot, he actually made a flight up there and he encountered a lost civilization and blah, 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 blah. And I thought that that was just like doctrine and fact. But over time, I've changed my opinion on that. I guess it's still possible. Like I try not to be completely closed-minded, but I think that the
Right.
chances are very, 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 very small because I think that that main group that traveled north to the North countries, they simply went up into mostly Europe and especially into Britain. Um, they just had that special state conference in the UK with Jeffrey R. Holland and then M. Russell Ballard and Quentin L. Cook. And they have that online. You can go check that out. I guess somebody recorded it. But Jeffrey R. Holland talked about how we would be foolish and unwise if we think that there isn't more Israelite blood to be gleaned from the British Isles, and that the best days of the church in Britain are ahead of us.
Oh yeah, I watched that. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think Britain is a very special place. I have a whole playlist that I've done about the 10 lost tribes, and it's not talking about a hidden civilization that we don't know about. It's talking about like there's an Ensign article that traced the linguistics after 700 BC, around the time of the conquest of the northern kingdom by Assyria, and how you can trace the language, how it kind of like made its way up into Europe and also around the Black and Caspian Sea. And it's had an effect on the Germanic portion of the Indo-European language tree. And that includes English. That around that time, all of a sudden, these like kind of this Hebrew influence um, made its way into the language with names, words, sounds, stuff like that.
Wow.
Um, there's just like so much to it. And even to this day, like if you go to Wikipedia or other places, there are certain groups around the world that claim that they are part of the 10 lost tribes. For example, you have the Pashtuns that are in Afghanistan, and they're actually the ones that's where the Taliban comes from, by the way, is from the Pashtun tribe in Afghanistan. But they have a tradition of having been descended from Israel, and they have Israelite names like Reuben and Gad and Dan and Ephraim and all that stuff, and they
Mm-hmm.
still like light candles before the Sabbath, and it's this whole thing, you know. And they have been recognized by the chief rabbinate in Israel as the same people
As one of
as
the
they are
tribes
who
of
they say they
Israel.
are.
Wow.
Yeah. So you can point to different groups like that. There's the Kochins in India. There's British Israelism. There's other groups, even as far as Japan. And I'm trying to like go through and like
The Scythians,
the Scythians. Yeah,
yeah, that's an interesting concept there.
it is.
Interesting subject. Yeah.
Yeah, and it with like when you look into British Israelism, they think that Saxon, you know, as in like Anglo-Saxon, the Saxons were a separate group, that they came from the Scythians, and then you have Scotland that kind of comes from that word. So,
Right.
and we know that Joseph Smith was a pure Ephraimite, you know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah, that's
literally.
what I heard. An
Yeah,
Adamite or Ephraimite.
Ephraimite. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's
And
already so much already here. If we just kind of like look, we can tell that they are here. Some of them have lost their identity. Some of them were conquered by the Muslims or other cultures, and they may have had their own scripture that maybe it's somewhere in some cave, just like the Dead Sea Scrolls were.
right. Right.
So I
And
don't
they
think
were
that we need a, huh? Go ahead.
no, go ahead. Sorry.
So I don't think that we need some like lost civilization that's going to come forth and, um, because like one of the
And
big
we're not
things,
ruling it out, are we, Jared?
no, no, no,
We're
no,
not
no.
ruling it out.
It could happen. It could happen.
But I'll
I
tell you,
just, yeah.
B.H. Roberts changed his mind on it. Bruce R. McConkie changed it. If you go and watch my video on that, not the one from 2 years ago, but I put the link in that video to go to the other video. I guess I'm doing a shameless plug real quick, but
Mhm.
uh, Bruce R. McConkie changed his mind. If you've heard of uh, Millet, right?
Yeah.
What's
Uh,
his first name?
is it Robert?
Robert Millet. Yeah.
Yeah.
He completely does this little there's an excerpt I put in there from him where he's changed his mind. And it's because as time progresses and technology and everything, you learn that Isaiah is the one that Joseph Smith quotes in the Doctrine and Covenants, where he talks about a highway being cast up from the great deep.
Yep.
You know, and it's hyperbole.
Mhm.
Isaiah spoke not literally, but he spoke hyperbolic language where he, poetically, where it wasn't meant to be taken literal. They were lost to the countries of the north. Doesn't say they weren't scattered, and it goes on and
Yeah.
on. And we learn
And the
those
thing
things, and
is,
it's interesting.
if you go to those scriptures, okay, because that was part of my research and my playlist about the 10 lost tribes. If you go to the footnotes, when it talks about a highway, it takes you to other scriptures that are talking about basically a highway of righteousness, or in other words, you could say a covenant path. Okay, so that makes total sense when you put it in that context, that scattered Israel and those in the north, meaning Europe, like the main body probably went north to Europe, that they'll be coming back on a highway or a covenant path of covenants and ordinances, and they'll be brought back into the kingdom, because before they were lost, but now they're coming back in mass. Another one that they use a lot of times, they point out Jeremiah, I think it's 12 verses 6 through 8 or something like that. It's the one where it talks about it's no longer going to be said that, or we're no longer going to talk about Moses leading the Exodus out of Egypt, but we're going to be talking about how the tribes that went north have been brought back. I'm just kind of paraphrasing. Okay. And so a lot of people take that to mean that what's going to happen now with the 10 lost tribes coming back is going to be more spectacular and more incredible than the Exodus, meaning like more miracles, more spectacle, right? And I've looked into that. In fact, I did a video on this talk that President Nixon gave, and he was drawing a parallel between the original Exodus out of Egypt and then the pioneer trek, how you had the two Josephs, right? But then after that, you had Moses that led Israel out of Egypt. And then you had Brigham Young that led the saints out of persecution and out of the United States to their promised land.
Uh-huh.
And he references that very scripture, because when you read that scripture, it doesn't say anything about it's going to be more spectacular nowadays. It just means that there's going to be a shift in conversation. We're not Jews anymore, where we commemorate all the feast days and they all hail back to the Exodus. Now in the church, we celebrate Pioneer Day. We talk a lot about those early saints and what they went through.
Well, it
So
is. I'm sorry. I'm
go
excited
ahead.
about what you're talking about.
No,
I'll just
no,
say it
you're
real
fine.
quick.
Go ahead.
And it's bigger. Here's an
Yeah.
interjection. It's bigger. It's huger. Uh, and our like I said, the internet, the World Wide Web, is a miracle within itself. And all
Yeah.
the technology we have, we're flying in the air. We're sending missionaries all over the world. We're penetrating every continent. We're visiting every clime.
Yeah.
You know, DNC
The
4. I
entire
could go
world.
on and on.
And that's the thing, because okay, so in the Bible dictionary, when you look this up, the Bible dictionary says that it'll be more spectacular, but that's only in the Bible dictionary. Now, if you want to say that it's going to be more spectacular, just exactly what you were saying, if you went back to Jeremiah's time and you want to interpret what he said in that way, that it's going to be more spectacular, he would be blown away, just like he said, that we're flying, that we're taking trains, that we're taking cars, that we're using the internet. Like, it would have been magic to him, and it would have been more spectacular to him. When we're reading it from our point of view, the 21st century, like, to us, we're like, oh no, it's no big deal. Like, this is not spectacular at all, because I
This
think a lot
isn't
of
the
people,
miracles that he's talking about.
yeah, because I think a lot of people have been trained to look at things in a cinematic way. Like, we're used to watching movies and we're used to seeing incredible things. So we think that we're the audience and that it's going to be like a show for us to watch. And I don't think that that's the case. We're going to participate in it, but it's not going to be like all nice and wrapped up in a present for us, just to like, no, it's like spread out. It's very practical. I think the Lord likes to work in practical ways. Like, certainly there are miracles, but even miracles are done, I think, in practical ways, maybe ways that we don't understand, but they are practical and rooted in
Well,
reality.
what are okay? So if you tie in miracles to, let's just say, magic, we watch movies like you said, but what do wizards do? They use the elements.
Mm-hmm.
They use the elements.
Yeah.
What does Heavenly Father do? What is technology? Technology is basically a manipulation of the elements. Those are
Mm-hmm.
modern miracles. I believe that this is my own opinion, that Joseph Smith, when he says he translated the Book of Mormon by the gift and power of God, he's speaking about, in my opinion, whatever he got through the Urim and Thummim or the seer stones, that they were able to do things that we're doing on this laptop that I have, or my cell phone. That's a
Yeah.
modern day Urim and Thumb, or seer stone, you know?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I totally agree. President Hall, and another thing that he said during this British state conference special event, he said something to the effect of like, sometimes we're so close to history that we don't even know that it's happening, because again, it's not going to play out like a movie where things are like just so obvious. It's like this is a big, long story that's taken thousands of years to play out, and it's still going. But like, if you could see things from God's point of view, maybe it would look like a movie. But from our point of view, with all these things that are going on in the world right now, with like natural disasters, with volcanoes going off and earthquakes and hurricanes and tsunamis and stuff like that, those things are literally happening, and they're doing it it's happening at like a accelerated pace, right? The climate is changing for whatever reason. I'm not going to go into that, but things are happening. And for the people that are actually being affected by these things, like if you were in La Palma right now and one in your house with in a river of lava, took down your house, for you, you would feel pretty apocalyptic. And that is happening
Right.
right now. So things are happening. We are so close to history. I think there's a lot of people that don't even realize what's going on.
And we're gonna miss the boat if we're not see. My brother has a saying. They can't see the forest because the trees are in the way.
Yeah.
In other words,
It's the same concept.
yeah. Look.
Yeah.
Now before we were scheduled to do this at another time, and then we weren't able to do it. We were going to do it with Palmer, but he's not feeling good.
Yeah.
Um, we were going to talk about conference a little bit.
Mhm.
Uh, how did you see, what do you think the major themes were in this general
Oh
conference?
my gosh. So I saw several different themes. Okay. One of the biggest ones that I saw, I try to, okay. So what I was doing for my channel, I was going through to try and count how many times certain themes came up, certain concepts, words, whatever. One of the biggest ones, and I don't know how many times this came up because I didn't get to that point yet, but there was a lot of mention of the two great commandments: love God and then love your neighbor. And I picked up on that because um, in the September Liahona, the main article was by Elder Garrett W. Gong, and he was talking about creating Zion. And as I read that article, there was a lot of talk about um, avoiding contention and being unified and coming together um, in the gospel, not together as in like we accept all manners of wickedness and stuff, coming together in the gospel and becoming Zion, which Zion is the pure in heart. It's also the one in mind and the one in heart. Like we can't have Zion if there's contention and if we're like arguing over all these different topics that the world is trying to divide everybody up into all these different camps, right?
Groups, yeah.
And unfortunately, that's made its way into the church. And, COVID was a big one. Obviously, it divided a lot of people along these lines of like vaccine or not, or mask or
Right.
not, politics, social issues. So I think that they're really concerned as we're getting closer to the second coming on focusing on the two great commandments, putting aside those differences and coming together as one and being Zion so that we're prepared for when Christ comes, because he's not going to accept us unless we're Zion. So that was one
Right.
of the big ones I like noticed.
Yeah, I could definitely see that too myself.
Yeah.
Um, I also saw on myself. I noticed that there were several talks on suffering, and it wasn't spiritual suffering as it. Well, some of them were, but a lot of it was physical suffering. And
Mhm.
I've even seen some ads, uh, video ads where the ones you'll see on the website, the church website. I don't know if you saw that one where they're giving a woman a blessing, and
Mm.
then President Nelson mentioned something about in the future, the near future, we're all going to be able to use. I'm paraphrasing. Doggone it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wasn't gonna bring this up, but so I wasn't quite prepared. But mainly, I noticed a lot of talks were on physical suffering, and in that particular ad, the prophet mentions that we're going to be of use, with our priesthood and and exercising our faith and
Yeah.
blessing the lives of others.
Yeah.
Uh, did you feel that too when you watched conference about physical suffering?
I actually didn't, but I know what you're talking about when he said that basically we need to be prepared as priesthood holders to use our priesthood in the days ahead. And maybe that's what you're thinking about as far as like giving like blessings to people.
Well, even with this COVID thing, in my own
Yeah.
stake and my own ward, um, I'm in the elders quorum presidency, so I've had the opportunity to give blessings, and when I was sick, receive blessings. And I'm sure that's happening a lot right now
Yeah.
because of that sickness.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure we're also going to see other plagues, other diseases, other viruses, other
Yeah.
things that are going to plague the earth, you know,
Yeah.
with who knows what. And we're going to have that opportunity to bless the lives of our fellow beings in our wards and in our stakes.
Yeah.
I
Well,
like
I
to
can tell
talk.
you this.
Go
Oh,
ahead.
go ahead. Okay. I can tell you this. So this series that I'm doing, going through his 31 talks in 2018, he talked about blessings, about how it seems like some people don't even, some men that hold the priesthood don't even understand what the priesthood is and what they can
Yeah,
do
yeah,
with it.
yeah.
He told a story about there was like a baby blessing, and the father did it, but he did it without giving an actual blessing to his baby, and how unfortunate that was. And so I think that's probably been a theme of his, at least since he's become president, maybe even longer. And maybe it's that kind of like foresight, because that was back in 2018. Maybe it was that prophetic foresight that he knew that in coming years and who knows how long, that we would need to like understand what a blessing is, and that we're authorized as led by the Spirit to give blessings to people, to heal them, to whatever, bless them with whatever they need. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Uh, how about Brad Wilcox? Do you know who he is? That
what was he in this last
he's a
conference?
you know he's kind of like who's that other public speaker? He does a lot of seminars for the youth. He'll go around and do different. But
Like
he was
John,
in
by
the
the way.
yeah John By the Way. He's just like John By the Way. He does stuff
Okay.
like that. I think he's even got a podcast. But he's in the Young Men's General Presidency. I don't know if he's second counselor or first counselor, but his talk on worthiness is not flawlessness. It was the the nightly session, the evening session, Saturday evening session,
Yeah, yeah.
and I love that talk. He goes into he talks about Christ's mercy and grace, and that some mistakenly, I wrote it down here. Let me read it. Some mistakenly receive the message that they are not worthy to participate fully in the gospel because they are not free of bad habits. The Lord, he goes on to talk about also that the Lord looks upon weaknesses differently, and I love this part, than he does rebellion. So the Lord doesn't look at everything like it's willful sin,
Yeah.
that some of it is weakness. And I like when he says, when the Lord speaks of weakness, it is always with mercy.
Mhm.
So check that out. It's a really good
Okay.
talk by
Yeah.
Brad Wilcox. This has been fun,
Yeah.
Jared.
Absolutely.
I want to do this again. I really do.
Anytime. I'm always available. Like, because both you and me, you said that you were self-employed. I'm self-employed.
Yeah.
I don't know the nature of your work, but with me, I don't have any like time constraints necessarily. It's just like work whenever I have time to work. And so I'm basically always available. So, and I'm happy to have these kind of conversations and talk about things. So
Good.
there's so much to talk about.
I hope I didn't interrupt as I interrupt you. I hope I didn't interrupt you too much.
No.
I'm learning how to do better interviews where I need to be quiet. As a matter of fact, I did this. And is there anything, did we go too long? Is there
No.
anything else you want to talk about?
The one thing that I wanted to point out, I took count of two other things, how many times it showed up in conference. One was Elijah was brought up a lot. He was brought up 7 different times throughout conference. And then I don't know if this means anything, but the number 7 came up, let's see, 6,
Oh, yeah.
7, 8, 9, 10, 11 different times with different speakers. So that just kind of caught my interest. But in regards to Elijah, I'm getting the sense that they're really right now really wanting us to go to the temple and do work for the dead as part of gathering scattered Israel. And I think it's because if you are familiar with President Nelson, his two big things are gathering scattered Israel and then the second coming. And it seems like he talks like it's like happening soon, whatever that means to you. And so I'm thinking that they want to try and get as much temple work done for the dead as possible, so
Yeah.
that for those who accept the gospel, they'll be able to be resurrected when Michael blows the horn and the resurrection happens. Because if you're a righteous person in the spirit world, I don't think you're going to be resurrected until someone has done the work for you and you've accepted it. Because my understanding is that when you get resurrected, you're resurrected to one of the three glories. So you can't be resurrected until you've had that chance to accept
Yeah,
those covenants.
I definitely agree with you. I would concur. I I'm going to be as bold as to say that I think it's within the next 10 years.
I would agree.
There is an urgency that we are hearing, aren't we, Jared? There is very much an urgency.
Look, they keep saying things over and over again, not just President Nelson, but others, like the work is hastening. We've reached a hinge point. Sister Wendy Nelson said, maybe we're more latter in these latter days than we may think. Just all these different things to like say, hey, you guys, it's time. It's like, we're almost there. Go
Right.
get the work done in the temple so we can get these people ready to be resurrected, and get yourselves ready, and let's become Zion so that we're not embarrassed when Christ comes, all arguing with each other. So yeah.
I love it. I love it. Before we go, would you like to plug your channel for us? And I'm going to put your link in the descriptions so that anybody that go check out, what's the new name of the channel again? I keep wanting to say the
It's
other
called
one.
Christian Homestead.
Christian Homestead. I like how it's developing. I really do. And
Thank you.
when I talked to you on the phone a few times before I even went to your channel, I didn't picture you with a 10-gallon hat and a Brigham Young beard.
That's a recent development in my life.
Well, you got to look the part, man. You're a
Yeah,
homesteader, right?
yeah.
You got to do it. Do it all the
Part of the
way, right?
uniform. Mm-hmm.
You're one of these
For
guys
sure.
that does it all the way.
Yep. All the way.
All right. Thank you, Jared.
Thank you.